Good evening and welcome to Whole Child Wednesday. Janelle is not joining us today, but we are joined by the director of the Social Emotional Learning Department. So welcome back, Patricia Russell.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's nice to be back.
We've been carrying on this series just talking about how to support students and how families and teachers can support our children. But we thought it'd be good to kind of zoom back and just look at what is the Social and Emotional Learning Department and one of the initiatives of the department, which is an SEL screener that some parents may have heard about recently. So Patricia, do you want to start out just by giving us the elevator pitch? What is the Social Emotional Learning Department?
Yeah, absolutely. So in education, we do refer to it as the SEL or Social Emotional Learning Department. But if we think about it in layman's terms, it's just basically the way that we recognize and have an awareness for our self skills, as well as how we communicate and we relate to others. And then a large piece around that is decision making skills. So when we teach these components in schools, we talk about self awareness, helping students to become aware of themselves and their feelings, as well as social awareness. And we talk about self-management, being able to have some self-control and self-regulation. And then we talk about relationship skills. How do we interact with other people? Because, John, as you and I know, that when we start to look towards the future and we think about our career and possibly going to college, if that's necessary for our career step, we have to be able to get along with others. And then just in our basic relationships every day, it's important for us to learn how to cohabitate with others. And then the part that kind of all of those components revolve around is just decision-making skills. So how do you make decisions based on the things that you know about yourself and how you relate to others? So that's what, we're working on for our students as well as with our teachers and our leaders.
Yeah, and I know that you've talked for a long time about just how we identify how to support students academically, a lot of times through some kind of a benchmark or a screener, and that you've worked on finding a way to identify more universally what students could be working on. So do you want to talk us through how you landed on a screener and what that process has looked like this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about the academic side of our work, with our academic side, we have structures in place. We have a universal screener that's used for our students to kind of find out where to start teaching them. What are some of their strengths as well as their challenges? And then using that academic screener, we align to our students' needs. And that's what we want to do when it comes to the non-academics, which is what we kind of consider the social emotional learning piece. We call it our essentials. We find out where our students' strengths are, and that's what our screener is going to help us do. So sometimes we might have a student that has a strength when it comes to social awareness, meaning that they just get along with people. It doesn't matter who you put them with. They interact well. They have just very great social skills. But that student could also need some support when it comes to self-awareness. So that will kind of be me when it comes to self-awareness. Sometimes I'll need support there. And then we use the SEL screener to help guide us into providing support for that student, challenges, as well as highlighting their strengths. So that's where our counselors will come in and teachers can come in and start to provide support for our students.
That's great. And so when you're providing that screener, you've covered a couple of times the domains. And so these domains are based on a national model, right? The CASEL model. And the state of Tennessee adopted this model, and Hamilton County has just mirrored their program after this model. So we've heard you say a couple of times self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. So that's not coming out of Patricia Russell's brain. It's coming from a national model that we've decided to adopt. I thought it was really important to highlight that working on social emotional skills, how many students that we work with will see an improvement. And so I found some data that showed that an overwhelming percentage of the students who have an SL program added to their school do show improvement in the areas that we're trying to improve. So that's half of the picture, right? Like we see that the students can improve, and then how much they improve is kind of the other half of the picture. So you want to talk to us a little bit about that combination of implementing SEL, seeing improvement, and then seeing where the improvements happen?
Yes. So I'll share just a little quick story. Many of those that have had an opportunity to interact with me know that I spent many years as a teacher, and then from teacher I transitioned to school counseling, and then became passionate about the leadership work, which entered me into the work that I do now. So with that, when I was in schools, I was honored to develop a leadership program that I worked on with another colleague. It was actually Lindsay Hagan worked on this program with us. And what we mainly did was focus on social emotional learning skills. So we were able to have students to complete an application just as if they were getting a job. And they applied. Our grade average was that they had to have C's and above, because we would always tell students if you're scoring maybe a D or lower, you're not working at your full potential, because we know all of our kids are capable of making C's and above. So I share all that to say that we took this group of students, sometimes we had 50 or more, and we taught them skills such as communication, self-awareness, these same SEL skills, collaboration, critical thinking skills, and they had sessions each week that they will go through. And what we noticed with these students is what we see here on this chart, that there was an improvement in not only their behavior, but there was an improvement in their self-awareness. There was an improvement in the way that they carried themselves. There was an improvement in their standardized test scores, in their grades, because they had a greater awareness of their strengths and their needs. So if we look at this chart here, we notice that there's an increase, and I like to go to the highest bar, a 23% increase in social emotional skills. And if you kind of go down the chart here, you'll notice that there's an 11% increase when it comes to the standardized test scores. So it just kind of shows you there that students that have an opportunity to learn social emotional skills and work on them, you're going to see an increase in standardized test scores. And if you go down, a reduction in emotional distress and a reduction in problem solving, meaning that they'll have better goals or better skills to solve problems, and that should be an increase in problem solving. I apologize. A reduction in problem behaviors, and improvement in their attitude, and then you'll have a 9% chance of improvement in their social behavior or pro-social behavior, which is being more proactive when it comes to behavior. So it works. I know it works, and I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, it really comes through. And I think it was important that you included that you see an improved standardized test score. I think sometimes people think of these as soft measures. These are kind of the other things. So we have like academics and then this other stuff. But even if you do take that view that academics are all that matters and we don't care about a whole kid's development as a person and as a citizen, doing these programs still improves their academic scores. And I don't know of many academic interventions that give you an 11% increase with the small amount of time that we spend on social emotional development. So you really get your bang for the buck, whether you're worried about the other skills or not.
Yeah, and one of the things that, I've kind of learned through studying SEL, and even with the work that we're doing around the neuroscience of stress and self-care, is that learning is more of an emotional skill than a cognitive skill, because in order for learning to take place, you have to make sure that a student or a person is able to focus, that you have their attention. We talk a lot about being engaged. So being engaged is about being in a place where you are ready to listen and focus. And then having that ability to remember the things that you're learning, so that you're growing your skills. So all of those are emotional skills which translate to cognitive development.
And so I wanted to shift a little bit from thinking kind of abstractly about how important social emotional learning skills are and what the department is aiming to work on, to talk about the screener itself. So I know last year that you guys, before I joined you, did some work with a small number of schools, and the screener that you used with those schools, you were able to identify some trends. So maybe if you could talk to us about how important it is to identify trends and what happens once you identify a trend among a group of schools.
Yeah, so I'm happy you have this information up. On last year, it was our very first year with implementing our SEL, I'll just say tracker, because we started to collect data around social emotional learning last year for a few of our piloting schools. And this is just a few of the results that we received. But if you notice, taking a look at some of the things that teachers and students said that they had a strength in, or an area of strength, was relationship building skills and self-confidence. And this gives me a quick moment just to talk about, when we're gathering data, who's providing that data for us. So when we start to talk about an SEL screener, a lot of the information will come from, this year we're really including student voice, how they feel about their development when it comes to skills outside of academics. And then we're also including teacher voice. And a piece of that I know we discussed including, and we're going to make a strong effort, is to include parent voice this year. So what are some of these skills that we want to see develop? But if you notice, our strengths are relationship skills. Students felt that they had a strong sense of confidence. And then when it came to area of needs, we kind of looked a little bit at the attention, maybe students being distracted. They kind of felt that it was a need, that they needed some support with kind of staying on track, and then making good decisions. So when it comes to a student's strengths, I'll go back to the statement that I made in the beginning. It's our goal to highlight these strengths for students and give them opportunities to use them. So how can we, if we have a student that has strong relationship skills, a great opportunity for the student is to possibly be maybe a peer tutorer. So they could help another student. They get along really well with students. Or to lead a group of students in an activity. They have very strong relationship skills. But then when it comes to a need, a way that we can help students with their needs, if we have a student that has trouble making decisions and they need support with that, one of the things that I would do is I would often give that students opportunities to make decisions. So for example, something simple you could do at home is, for dinner, you might have the option of chicken nuggets or pizza, allowing a student to choose, but then you also kind of set those guardrails. And we can do the same thing at school. Often at school, I'll hear teachers say, all right, would you prefer to use a pen or a pencil this time? Something really simple. Would you prefer outdoor resource or indoor recess? So these are all ways that we can kind of strengthen some of these skills for students, and allow some of these things to become a habit and a strength for them instead of a need.
And you kind of talked about taking a small thing like choosing your pencil and building on it. And I think that feeds right into the idea of a tiered approach. And so we talk in education a lot about a tiered approach, but this is some data from last year, just a small number of schools. But can you kind of talk us through, once we identify what tier a student falls in, what does that mean, and how does that change how we work with that student?
Yeah, so we love tiers in schools. We have the 3 tiers for everything, but when it comes to students' SEL development, we'll use these tiers as well, using a tier 1. We always say tier 1 is what all students have access to. So a tier 1 could be something as simple as a career fair. All students are capable of going to a career fair that's offered by a school. But then when you start to look at a tier 2, Tier 2 A and B, we start to work with smaller groups. So let's say, for example, we'll use that same career fair. Everyone can go to a career fair, but you might have maybe 50 of your students that attend the career fair, but they might not have any idea of what their interest is. So I can see a counselor or teachers working with students around, what do you think might interest you? What are some of the booths you might want to visit when you go to this career fair? So just kind of helping maybe a smaller group. And then it intensifies as you kind of go down the tiers. You'll have your tier 2B, which is a smaller group of students. And if you look at the percentages here, I think they kind of fluctuate just a little bit. But you have your smaller group of students, and then you have your tier 3 students. And often the tier 3 students, they're usually maybe one-on-one contacts with an individual, or sometimes maybe a small group, maybe 2 to 1. And this could be work with a teacher, or work with a mentor, or work with a counselor. So depending on the student need, once again, this goes back to what does the student need in order to reach their full potential. We will tier that student and then provide support for their need.
One thing that I really liked when I joined the social emotional department is that all of the focus wasn't on needs, that there was also what are students' strengths. And so do they have a need in this domain, but they have a strength in confidence. And so we can use that confidence to start to approach this domain where they're struggling. And so that's been really good for me to see, to remind myself it's not always about just what's wrong with the student. It's about what does he have going for him that we can use to leverage towards that need.
Correct. You're absolutely right. And I'm happy you brought that up because we definitely want to make sure that we teach students to capitalize on their strengths. And even as adults, we learn to play to our strengths more than, our area of needs because our strengths are the things we're naturally good at.
And so thinking about those tiers of needs that students have, what everyone is seeing now is kind of a screen that shows what counselors and administrators will have access to, where they can find groups of students who are struggling in areas and create interventions around those. So do you want to talk to us about some of the interventions a counselor might use if they see that a student's really struggling with their self-management, let's say?
Yeah. So when it comes to self-management, I think this is when I think about all of the competencies, I think being a human being, it's just an area that we're always working on. But when it comes to self-management, something as simple as for a student, just knowing when to take a break. Sometimes we can, with all of the expectations we have around student work and achievement, sometimes I think it's wise for our students to know just kind of when they're starting to feel tired and when to take a break. So, and that just kind of comes with being able to manage yourself and your emotions. When you start to feel too fidgety, it might be time to take a break. So I know often our adults will help with that. For some of our younger students, they might have their little reminders that they could have. It could be something as simple if you're in person to tap someone on the shoulder or have a timer. But, just having that opportunity to teach students to pace is just one way that we can help with an area that they might want to grow. But then going back to the strengths, we can say a growth mindset. I think about a growth mindset, and a growth mindset is just being flexible and knowing that when things are not working, you don't give up, you keep going. So I can see in schools how we highlight students for not giving up, not being afraid to learn or try something new. And if it doesn't work, you keep trying until you get it.
Yeah, that's really great. I did want to highlight one thing that's not here yet, but is coming, which is individual student plans. So we're working with a couple of schools to figure out how we do this in Hamilton County. But having a plan for every single student in a school building around all of their needs, academic, but also any health needs, any needs that they may have around their behavioral, social, emotional, their family concerns about communication with the school. So without going too in depth, do you want to talk us through like what would happen once we have this really comprehensive plan for a student? What does that process look like as they mature through, elementary, middle school, high school?
Yeah. So, I'm so excited about this. When I think about students having their own individual plan, and it's not just an academic plan, it's their own pathway to success. To me, that's education. So I think about holistic education, teaching the whole child. Our goal here in Hamilton County is not just to graduate students and make sure that they're academically prepared, but we want to graduate whole students to make sure that they're prepared for life. And to me, that's what the Student Success Plan speaks to. It speaks to preparing a student to be successful in life and to reach their full potential. And that's having a student to be aware of the different elements of themselves. So their strengths that we capitalize on, anything they feel that they need to improve. their academics, as well as any supports that they may need. So I look at this and it makes me very excited because to me, I'm speaking personally, this is the dream for education, to be able to tap into every element of a student to help them reach their full potential, and to know that when they leave our doors, be it kindergarten, first grade, second grade, whichever classroom they leave, we've done our best job to make sure that we've educated the whole child and we're sending them off to be successful.
So yeah, I work a lot closely with that project, and I'm really excited about the idea of every student having a plan. And I find that other districts or partners that we work with, when they see that idea, then it's kind of a light bulb moment for them. Like, oh yeah, every student having this holistic plan. That's something that we should have been doing a long time ago. So it's exciting to see Hamilton County leading that work, and I want to see where that goes in the future. So if I'm a parent or a community member and I'm watching this and all of this work sounds exciting and I want to be engaged, I want to make sure that my student is engaged in the skill building exercises that we talked about, who do I contact at the school level?
Yeah, so hopefully our parents all know that they could always contact their school administrator or principal at any time. But the school counselors are the ones that kind of house these plans and support students with their social emotional needs. So the school counselor would be the best contact for that information.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for joining us this week, Patricia Russell, for rejoining us. And I'm sure we'll all be relieved to have our regular host, Janelle, back last week. She did send a couple of notes for announcements. We do still have free meals available to pick up on Wednesdays from 9 to 10 a.m. at your student's school. On next Tuesday, Dr. Johnson is going to host a town hall with medical professionals at 4:30 p.m. So that'll be on our Facebook and YouTube. If you can't catch it live, it'll be rebroadcast on Facebook. We're in phase 3 all the way up till fall break. So we will be in person learning if you didn't choose ACS at home through fall break. And a reminder that the parent toolkit and other resources are on ac.org. Just click parents and it'll take you right to our resource page. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for having me on.